house and of course my wife and I were running around Red Rocks and checking out the rock and roll and going to the Rocky Mountains and all that stuff that you follow out on social media. And it's been a little while away from this guy because I was in the mountains. And by the way, Marty Conway, I thought of you in vivid color. My wife and I crossed the border into Wyoming on Tuesday, and we saw camels. Real, not the kind you smoke, right? I mean, camels like with the hump on the back like you see when you're doing your thing in Qatar. You were once spotted on a camel on a beach in Qatar, right?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you know what I saw while I was on the plane back and forth this past month to Qatar. I watched some sort of a documentary about the camel. Imagine that. And it actually started in the Northern Hemisphere. It was actually when they went back and traced all this and found bones and all this sort of stuff. They found it in the higher elevation in the colder areas, and so it's been a migration over hundreds and hundreds of years. So I would have been surprised until I watched that documentary, but it's pretty fascinating.
Marty, I've driven through a lot of countrysides in Scandinavia, in Germany, across Europe, certainly all across Australia. I've never seen camels. I mean, like literally, I've never looked off the side of the road and seen camels. And strangely enough, when I do, I think of you. So in his spare time, when he's not running around Qatar, he is a professor of sports business. I have not properly introduced Marty, who is a recurring and defending champion here at WNST for many, many years. He's a sports and marketing executive and former bigwig with the Orioles and the Rangers. I want to talk some baseball with you, Marty, because disturbing thing to me is I was away for a couple days, and I did have a couple people come up to me in Denver. We're going to Rockies games. The Rockies are having a rare good year this year, and some people are going to the games, and I watched the highlights a little bit and saw there were some fans in the stands. Are you not a little disturbed that the Orioles are playing the Yankees in really meaningful baseball on good weather nights in June and no one's going to the games? I mean, shouldn't that at some point alarm somebody? And the alarm went off last September when they were playing pennant race games and no one was going. And then it was, well, the weather's not right and the kids are back at school. And, well, these are big games, but they're not as big a games as we're not going to play at home next month. At what point are people ever going to go back to the ballpark the way they used to and not just for a bobblehead or a Jim Palmer throwback jersey?
Well, it's a good question. The answer is complicated, but the simple answer is they could. But I think what we don't talk about when this subject comes up is how different it is to reach people to get them to do anything from an economic or marketing standpoint, right? And so just from afar, it looks like it's a similar practice, which is to incentivize via giveaways on, maybe 35 or so of the 80 home games. And then what is not clear is, okay, what's the other 40 or 45 games? What's the incentive and how to do it? And I say that because two things have occurred since, actually in the last 6 to 8 years, which are, number one, people do not necessarily buy their tickets from the team and the box office anymore. People tend to go out and not only in the first place, but primarily they may buy their tickets from, a StubHub or some other kind of secondary ticket market. Now, I understand the Orioles and Ticketmaster have their own secondary market, right, with that. But what I'm saying is that I think people are increasingly conditioned to find a ticket on the open market, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for a certain game, understanding that they also might be able to pay less because somebody's willing to literally sell that ticket because they're not going. So I think,
but there's no more $5 way into the ballpark. I mean, that to me has been the number one change. Is how much does it cost to go? What do I get even on a Manny Machado bobblehead night? What am I coming home with? Am I really selling it? Am I putting it on my mantelpiece? And and then say, well, when's the bargain night? When's the night I can get in for $8 or $10? When does that night happen? That night doesn't happen anymore. Honestly.
Yeah. I have noticed that that's also been stripped away. The second thing I was going to say is that humans, consumers, are not buying things in the blocks that they used to. We've just talked about this yesterday, which is, the season ticket is all but extinct in sports. It's been replaced by something called the subscription or, different models like that. And I don't know that has really caught on yet in and around, the ballpark in Camden Yards. And what I mean is I don't see outreach that suggests that there's a difference. I know they're still trying to sell season tickets and 13 game plans and all that, but again, consumers who used to buy a record album now buy an iTunes single, right?
Sure.
That's a blazing example.
Or they steal it for free, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the same thing's true for baseball. If you're on in the bar and it's on, you're kind of stealing it for free and getting to watch it for free. You can watch all the games and never give them a nickel, never go to the game. And unless you love being out there and you love paying $9 for a beer, I don't give them any money, Marty. I watch them every night. They're here. I know what's going on, and I don't have to go to the ballpark.
Yeah, so that brings me to my last point, which, this is not a new circumstance. So when I was with the Orioles, we actually made a big move where we just had one over-the-air broadcaster, and people will remember that for decades most of the games were on WMAR, and most of the road games, and maybe opening day was on there. Well, there was a big sea change when the cable operator Home Team Sports came about and came in and purchased all the home games, or substantially all the home games. And the question was, well, is this going to put a damper and suppress people's interest in coming to the ballpark because they'll be able to stay home to watch it? I'm talking about the mid to late 1980s in this case. So we're talking about...
Or if the Blackhawks, you're talking turn of the century.
Yeah, several decades ago. But what happened was the way that the games were presented, the way the announcers presented it, the in-between innings, everything about it was focused on the fact that you really needed to be at the ballpark. It showed a lot of the fun, the excitement, really the expression. I don't see that. I don't see, an extra camera in the stands. I certainly don't see somebody along the sidelines. I don't see anything related to female interest. I don't see anything interviewing kids. I don't, so if you're sitting at home with a 3-hour commercial for your product and you're presenting it properly, or at least with some sort of innovation or motivation, it will tend to spur people to say, okay, here's when I want to go. I want to go to that weekend or this game, whatever. Again, it's not visible to me. And I think that is something that those three areas in some sort of combination are probably why they would have 16,000 against the Yankees or 23,000 against the Yankees. But when they play them on a Monday and it's a holiday, they would have 40-some thousand. So, that seems to be the method, the model. That's what locks them into 2.2 to 2.3 million in terms of attendance. If you want to get to 2.8 or 3 million, you're going to have to do things differently so that you get that same person make one more move during the course of the season. They go to one more game, or you get new people coming in to purchase those tickets. That's the only way you grow, 500,000 fans over 1 or 2 seasons. So that's an assessment. I think that's a reflection on sort of the way the games are presented and the methodology and maybe the mindset. And then also a recollection and a realization that this is the way people look at entertainment choices today. And you've got to stay current and be contemporary about it and be aggressive. And perhaps they're just not interested or able at this point to sort of make those things happen.
He is one of our genius guests around here. He's Marty Conway, professor of all things sports business down at Georgetown, and spends a lot of time here in the Baltimore-Washington corridor, and, of course, was instrumental in the Camden Yards and the opening with the Orioles and then the Texas Rangers. So let me go back into the Wayback Machine here, and let me play Dr. Melfi, because, we got a million things we could talk about with sports business, but watching the Orioles and the Yankees and the Red Sox this week in an alleged pennant race after a decade and a half where the Orioles didn't play any games like this in June, where they're kind of sort of in it, that I believe they would come back to some degree, and I know the Nationals were different. But, Marty, you sold baseball for, most of the formative part of your life, and when you would get into the elevator or give the speech and you worked your way up from low man on the totem pole to running the place, what was the message in that era? When I said to you, Marty Conway with Oriole Bird on your logo and your card, why should I care about the Orioles? Why should I come to a game? Why should I become engaged with baseball or the Orioles? I think the answer you would have given in 1987 or 1988 when the fantastic fan stuff was going on. And I happened to watch this old Memorial Stadium piece that my wife threw on our DVR. I watched it in the middle of the night on Wednesday when I got back and was stuck on Mountain Time. And I think about like the difference now when I see people at Orioles games versus the reason I initially went back in the 70s and what you were trying to sell during that era of we're Baltimore, there's hometown pride, there's baseball, there's community, there's family, there's history, there's heritage. It makes you feel good. You feel at one with Doug DeCinces or Bobby Grich or Jim Palmer. You know, I don't know what the reason would be for someone who's never been to an Oriole game or hasn't been for a while, who maybe doesn't follow baseball, to sort of get back into it. Because that's the only thing that's going to get people out there, is finding some people who used to come and don't come anymore and sort of kind of finding a way back into their heart, if not their wallet. And I don't see any sort of movement at all to do that, quite frankly.
Well, there's a lot there. I would wrap that up into a couple of words or a couple of phrases. The first is, you talked about, you know, how it was done. I would point to the fact that it was experiential. So it was a lot of what are those things that you talked about. It was emotion. It was Orioles magic. It was all these sorts of things. It was experiential, right? Part of paying your money for an entertainment choice, it doesn't matter to me whether you want to pick baseball, football, theme parks, or something else, is something is going to happen that you can't imagine, you couldn't think about, right? The ending is not predetermined, so the game itself has no predetermined outcome. But secondarily, there's something else that you incur and uncover while you're coming from the ballpark, the experience that you didn't formulate in your mind. And so it's a little bit of surprise and delight. That's another phrase that has been used in sort of the marketing realm, which is, what is it that somebody's going to come to tonight? What are they going to see that they weren't expecting to see, whether that's in the stands, out in the concourse, out in the picnic area, on Utah Street, all those sorts of things. Because when people start to make decisions about where to spend their money, the first thing they think about is, what should I expect the experience to be? It's not unlike when you make a choice to decide you're going to go out for dinner. You say, okay, what's the experience at dinner that I'm expecting, which then informs where I want to go.
Right. You can buy a hamburger right now for $1, or you can buy one for $14.99.
Right.
It depends on what you're expecting, right?
That's right. And so part of that is the experience. And I would say, it's funny because we're actually having a little gathering shortly around a group of people that were, involved in the run-up and the opening of the ballpark, from, designers to architects to employees and all sorts of, and that is that I think, generally speaking, with the exception of a few things they did last year, the statues and the center field roof deck and some others, the experience is pretty much the same, which is, you like that at Fenway Park, you like that at Wrigley Field, but you still have to add some things in and around the ballpark. And when you look at where people go now, and we talked about the fact that I was in Atlanta back at the beginning of the baseball season, and when you go out there and you see that tangential to the ballpark itself on the footprint, you see lots of entertainment and experiential things. Again, this is what people have been brought up to expect today. Forget what people were expecting 20 or 30 or 40 years ago.
Which was just a ball game, by the way.
What they're expecting today. Think about this. If that experience at Camden Yards extended all the way, past the restaurants, the pickles, the places like that, 1 or 2 blocks to the north, 1 or 2 blocks to the south, 1 or 2 blocks to the east, now you're putting people on a footprint that is substantially different and has all these sort of different kind of options, connecting the convention center, allowing people to sort of walk through there on the way there, just different things like that. And I think that's what fans would respond to. If you're talking about what kind of stimulus would they want to respond to, it's something like that, because this push and pull that we started talking about of giveaways every weekend they've seen that already. So it's really hard to stimulate something new and different. Occasionally they'll hit on one, but that's what I think of. And I think of back to just 6 or 7 years ago in 2012, I guess 6 years ago, when they unveiled the statues in center field and all of that, people came out to support that because it was new and different, and it was really sort of a bundle of excitement. And I just have not really seen that articulated in a sort of fun way. Right now, the experience looks like it's sort of a commodity, right? It's convenient, it's comfortable, it's affordable, and I think I've said this before. That's a nice description if you're selling family vehicles, but selling entertainment, it takes more of a reach.
But it's more than entertainment, though, right? They're trying to sell the lifestyle of caring about the team on a day-to-day basis to new people, not to you and me and all the other old white guys that grew up with Brooks Robinson and love baseball because we love baseball. Selling it to someone new who's not already there, or someone who's bought into, I watch the games on TV, but now I'm going to get in my car and go do it and spend a substantial amount of money versus what else I could spend with $100 or $200 on any given Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday night. I sort of grieve for them a little bit because this mismanagement over 25 years, and I've been going back and reading through my Peter Principles, and I think I'm going to release all the rest of the chapters that I have written this summer because what the hell, I wrote them 3.5 years ago. My wife got cancer, and you've never read them, but I think you would enjoy reading, some of the reenactment of how this thing got from where you left it when Camden Yards was built a quarter of a century ago to where it is now. And I see that they have a real problem selling the bandwagon, right? I mean, the bandwagon that is, I'm going to care about Dylan Bundy. I'm going to care about Mark Trumbo. I'm going to buy into Trey Mancini. I feel like what they have now are some baseball fans, some people that are really into the laundry and the giveaways and the bobbleheads and the nerdity that comes with that part of it. And then they really... They have a bar. I mean, when people go there, when I go there and experience the game, my experience is experiencing a bunch of people who aren't watching the game, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, there's no question, and that was part of the renovation 6 years ago, was the realization that people are not sitting in the stands with a scorecard on their lap and, a pencil and keeping all that. We know that. That's long been booked. But it does.
But don't they need somebody to care that much? I mean, isn't that?
Yeah, and what you need. So what you see is on a night when things are really bare and the weather's not good, the number is 11, 12, 13,000. That's a reflection of what their pre-sold base is. That's how you finally can really, when they don't release information, you're able to infer and deduce what the pre-sale season ticket kind of roster looks like. And so that number appears to have eroded from 2013, after the year after they first went to the playoffs, because people bought some sort of package in order to get advance postseason sales. And that is the difference between, like I said, it's incremental. You don't see it every night, but 3,000 here, 2,000 there, 4,000 here over the course of 65 to 80 home games will make a difference at the end of the year of 200 to 300 to 400,000 people in the stands. And so, like I said, to me it seems pretty formulaic, which is what it has been for some period of time. It's not as responsive to change, new players, new opportunities, new sizzle, things like that. They roll that out at the beginning of the season, new food, things of the sort, and then that's pretty much it. It doesn't change come June or July or August. They really sort of rely upon, is there going to be some sort of emotional attachment to the team? But ultimately, what if you really want to see an advancement, it's getting that person who comes once to buy something that means they come 4 times, or that person that comes 3 times to buy some sort of package that means they come 6 or 7, because even if they don't come every night, you get to count the fact that the ticket was sold, and I know you don't get the concession revenue, but you get a part of that. And I think they've sort of retreated in some regards to trying to sell mostly individual sales and try to capitalize on what those are. And then on the nights when the weather isn't good or the opponent isn't interesting, you can see that it suffers on those types of things. So, that's I was brought up in the Larry Lucchino, approach, and he went on from Baltimore to San Diego and then Boston, and that was the approach that they took. They were very aggressive in marketing, very much on the front foot, always looking to make a change or do something almost daily, as opposed to setting a plan for the season and then letting that sort of play out, because baseball seasons don't play out according to anybody's plan, and you have to be reactive and responsive if you want to maximize the opportunity, which is you want the capacity of the ballpark to be 80, 85, or 90% full when you sit back and look at the end of the season on your average attendance.
He is Marty Conway, longtime sports executive, now a professor at Georgetown, and travels over to Qatar and does some consulting work as well. Marty, I hate to be like the get off my lawn old guy here bitching on the radio about certain stuff, but
you are.
But I am. And 2 weeks ago, a dear friend of mine reached me and said she was in town for Preakness. Her husband and 2 kids wanted to go on the Saturday game where they gave away the Maryland flag Oriole thing. First off, and no one wrote about this, and I haven't done any research, but the whole notion that the Orioles' number one giveaway of the year conflicted with the Preakness, that you would either have to choose the Preakness or the Orioles, I found that to be sort of politically where Peter would be, to say, screw the track, let's go get them, that they gave their number one item of the whole year away that day. But more than that, my friend tried to get tickets for, her husband and 2 kids and said, man, it's $40 to go to a game. And I went online, and damn if it wasn't $40 straight away to sit in section 364 on the roof for that game. And I thought, are they really marking up the ticket prices based on the giveaway? And it's very clear they are. I mean, the Red Sox this weekend, you want to go to the Red Sox game on Thursday night, it's $15. You want to go on Saturday night when they're giving away the bobblehead, it's $30. Well, they're not giving the bobblehead away. You're paying 10 or 15 more bucks that they have now taken to buying items and just passing it along, which it's pretty good business, I guess. I mean, all things considered, it's not traditionally what I've understood. But if on a certain night they would give away a legitimate Manny Machado, like really nice jersey that would have $20 worth of cost, and they just build that into a $40, $50 ticket and sell the place out, I don't know why they're not giving away nicer gold-plated items these days and just upcharging people, because clearly that's what the fans want. I mean, they want a gold-plated bobblehead. They don't mind paying $40 to go that night if it has a collector's number on the bottom of it or whatever, right?
Well, yeah. So you mentioned that I think the key phrase in that in your response there was collectible. That's a slice. That's a sort of a segment, if you will. It's a really marketing term, a segment of the market that there's interest for that. As long as you don't abuse it, but people have been capitalizing on collectible stuff for some time. But, back to the pricing, just to give you some analysis of what they're seeing, which is this flex pricing model, which has gone around not just baseball, but the leagues now. The NFL is the one league, I should say, that hasn't done that yet, and they may, although they've sort of done that for preseason and in-season. They're recognizing that some games quote unquote have a higher value than others, and it seems that no matter what they do to the price of the Red Sox on a Saturday in June, they're likely to sell substantially all the tickets to the game, and so they have the pricing power to do that. Again, what it leads to is, how do you go at your season? Like, what's your strategy? Are you maximizing the full and the mini plan season sale, or you're really going all in on sort of an 81 game a la carte marketing approach? And it seems to me that is largely the approach that they've decided to go. There's a period of time where they sell season tickets, but there's not as much emphasis or resources devoted to that as there is to what you described, which is a shirt on a Saturday night in May, or a bobblehead or figurine on a Saturday night in June, and able to, play with those prices in order to do that. Is that the right thing to do? It all comes down to what people are willing to pay, and it seems to have some success here on certain nights. I don't know what it's like in the rest of Major League Baseball per se, but that's the way it is here.
No, well, you would say, well, they know their business. They're measuring this, but why they need to give a Machado bobblehead away on a Saturday night against the Red Sox,
Yeah.
that used to, the game used to sell itself.
Right.
And I guess that is
Yeah,
me
that's right.
being the old guy here, is my dad and I would say, I want to go Saturday because Bundy and Price are pitching, right? Like, I want to drive to Philly because Steve Carlton's pitching that night, not Dick Ruthven, And
how that shifted was when we were running the marketing and promotion, giveaways were Friday and Sunday, an acknowledgement that Friday was a night that we needed some help on, and Sunday was usually a family thing. You're right, Saturdays were left alone. And then that shifted when the ballpark began to sell out night after night, season after season. There were no giveaways on weekends because the tickets were already sold. If there were giveaways, it was in the middle of the week on a Tuesday or Wednesday when the idea was, well, we need some help on that night. And now it's transitioned sort of back to, trying to double dip on a Yankee or Red Sox weekend. And also I just think some of it, Nestor, is just, again, bowing to the acknowledgement that this is the way that fans have been conditioned to expect. And, again, whether it's data that they get that we're not privy to or just as they look around, that they don't seem to mind doing that. Fans don't seem to mind and expect that. But again, it comes back to, why would I buy anything other than a single Saturday night in June or a single Saturday night in May if I can get what I want, which is a figurine or a bobblehead or a T-shirt, and I don't have to do anything else commitment-wise during the course of the season? I can get what I want from StubHub or Ticketmaster or any of these other places. It's about conditioning. It's really about expectation when you're talking about marketing, and sometimes you have to really, really have a strong strategy to break through what people would typically do, which is to spend the least amount of money, the least amount of times, but get what they ultimately want out of their relationship with the team.
Marty Conway, you can find him out on LinkedIn, where he blogs too infrequently, as well as out on Twitter, where he opines about sports. Last thing, lacrosse, Maryland winning in Foxborough. This thing's gotten moved around. I mean, how did this city lose lacrosse, or how did lacrosse lose this city for the Final Four? I live downtown. It's kind of a shame it doesn't exist, but I also understand that it wasn't the boon in business that maybe they thought it once would become, right?
Yeah, in fact, I was down there on, I think maybe it was Saturday night, and that's kind of what I remarked, that you could tell there was no particular activity over the Memorial Day weekend. There were some things at the harbor, et cetera, but there was no strong sense. You didn't get the sense that there was any people from out of town in that. And to your earlier comment, clearly the city and the state lost lacrosse. It wasn't necessarily the other way around. And I think a lot of it had to do with the emphasis and the structure of how it was presented. Look, we've talked about this many times. Omaha is what it is to college baseball in the World Series, like Baltimore should be to lacrosse of the collegiate nature, men and women, because there's so much of an emphasis here. But having said that, Omaha has had to do a number of things in order to stay contemporary, in order to keep it. They've had to renovate stadiums. They've had to come up with pretty interesting marketing plans to do it, but they've conditioned people over time to do it. I think the NCAA is still trying to figure out, they're trying to find the best bidder at any particular time. But the simple fact is that this is a perfect example. Here you have the men's and women's championship teams coming from the state of Maryland, and if I'm not mistaken, over the next 4 years or so, until the early 20s, there's only going to be one NCAA playoff opportunity in the state of Maryland, and I think it's going to be at the Naval Academy. They're hosting the quarterfinals or something for the men's in 2018 or 19 or somewhere along the line. It's going to Delaware. It's going to all these other places, and Maryland hasn't been able to sort of gather the resources and do it in an interesting and entrepreneurial way. Again, like Omaha, like some other destinations that the NCAA seems to have been satisfied with, and it works out. So it takes a strong task force. It takes local marketing. It takes some commitment and resources in order to do it. And again, you have to evolve it, and I think that's what happened in Baltimore, there were a lot of people who were taking from the experience, putting tournaments around it, doing other kinds of things to take revenue from it, but not really looking at it in a consolidated way. The women's game was at Towson. The men's game was at M&T. You can see that this past year, they combined them up in New England at Foxborough, where the women's semifinals and finals were in the same venue and location as the men. I think that's what customers and fans of lacrosse would have expected.
And by the way, in a place that nobody really wants to visit, though, right? I mean, literally, right? I mean, you don't book that ahead of time and say, well, I'm just going to go to Foxborough no matter who's there, right? Especially when teams like Denver show up on short notice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's, like I said, I think it just comes back to the level of commitment, and I just think it's particularly hard at this point. The city has gone through some changes in leadership, and the state has a new governor, some things like that. Things have turned over, and the clear central focus around a few key jewel events, there just hasn't been the commitment in order to get it. And, Steve Bisciotti can't write checks for every event that needs to or they want to have happen in M&T Stadium. He has pledged. He's been very generous, both with his money and his resources, in order to try to get events and concerts and other things in M&T. But it's going to take more of a community-wide effort, a statewide effort, to get these sort of events here. And you see that the NCAA voted, which is to say, hey, Philadelphia, New England, and a few other places seem to want it more than you all do. And so we're going to go there. And they seem to be happy with it. And if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. But I think it's a loss, particularly around a Memorial Day weekend in this area, in the greater Baltimore and Chesapeake area, where lacrosse is incredibly popular, right?
I think so. That's what they tell me. Marty Conway is here. He's out on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and we've held you up long enough. He's the good professor down at Georgetown. Let us know next time you're getting back on a camel and going back over to Qatar. And at some point, you and I should enjoy a baseball game together. We should go to a game, right?
We should go to a game, maybe blog from the game or video from the game, whatever, and we'll sit in the stands and we'll explore some of that stuff.
Facebook Live. Mr. Angelos wouldn't like that, so let's do it. See you soon, Marty.
All right, buddy.
You got it. Marty Conway joining us here out on Twitter and LinkedIn, and everyone should go follow Marty, and we always love having him on to talk about baseball and business. I don't know if you were alarmed or whether you're one of the folks I'm speaking to that's watches the Orioles, pays attention, knows the score, has an app, knows what inning it is, knows who's pitching, but hasn't been back to the ballpark. I haven't been since opening day, and I don't really have any plans on going this week either. And I think as the ticket prices start to go north, it becomes more of a decision, I should say, as to not what night are you going to go, whether you want to go at all. And I know I read a lot of complaints about that, on the field, off the field, the pitching, all the stuff we talk about here. But it is kind of alarming to see the Yankees in town and the Orioles having gotten off to a good start, no one going to the ballpark. Except when they give away bobbleheads and they charge $20 more per ticket, which they do, and people don't mind. It's really weird. That's all I'm going to say. It's weird. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and, of course, always in the buyatoyota.com audio vault at WNST.net. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.